This is the story of a young man from New Zealand who was so successful at driving cars that he cut short his university studies in engineering, came to Europe to branch out as a professional driver. And in a few short years, he's been so successful as a driver, as a designer, and as a businessman that this little organization here, centered on this small factory at Colnbrook, last year exported racing cars worth $1.25 million. The name, of course, is Bruce McLaren, and he and his fellow New Zealander Denny Hulme drove the McLaren Ford single-seaters to such success last year that they finished second in the World Constructors Formula One Championship against the toughest opposition that the world could produce. But in addition, both Bruce McLaren and Denny Hulme, for the second year running, cleaned up the rich Can-Am series of 6 sports car races in the United States and Canada, collecting about £70,000 in prize money. You may not know much about the Can-Am series, but the way Bruce and Denny play it, it means a lot of dollars for Britain. And now here they are off to a flying start with the new American development, the formula for 5-litre single-seaters, and because of their prestige in the United States, with the racing successes they've had so far, they're already contemplating building 44 of these this year. This is another big dollar deal for Britain. Anyway, here's some pictures of the McLarens in action last year.
The final Grand Prix of 1968 in Mexico left McLaren second in the World Constructors' Championship. Bruce McLaren was born in Auckland, New Zealand in 1937. His first racing car was an Austin 7, in which he was spectacular if not successful, a far cry from the Formula One aerofoils of today. In 1958 he won New Zealand's Driver to Europe award, and despite some severe competition, he came second to Jack Brabham in the Formula 2 Championship during his first year in Britain. In 1959, McLaren became a Cooper Works driver and won his first World Championship race, the United States Grand Prix. But then followed several lean years. In 1966, he won the 24-hour race at Le Mans for Ford, but it was not until 1967 that his dedication really paid off, when he won the extremely valuable Can-Am series, a performance which he repeated in 1968. The Canadian-American Challenge Cup, Can-Am for short, is probably the most financially rewarding series of motor races. At a conservative estimate, it's worth about £70,000. In the 6 races which made up the 1968 championship, McLaren cars, driven by Bruce McLaren and world champion Denny Hulme, walked over all the available opposition the rest of the world could muster, including several private entrants driving production versions of McLaren's own car. Their achievement in winning the Can-Am series is even more remarkable when you consider that it was only part of the McLaren effort, which also included a full Formula One program. During the season, McLaren and Hulme flew many thousands of miles between Can-Am circuits like this one at Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin, and the Formula One circuits in Europe.
Well, now let's take a look at the 3 McLaren models for 1969. First, the Can-Am sports racing car with the Chevrolet engine at the back. That's to say, it's got a Chevrolet block and crankshaft, otherwise an extremely special car. This cost you about £6,500, but if you want a 7-litre engine giving about 620 horsepower, you can say about £8,000 investment altogether. Even so, about 80 people have found it worthwhile to spend the money. The body, as you can see, is highly streamlined, plus what goes on the back. The air going in through here and out through there, or through the radiator, puts a big downthrust on the nose to keep the front wheels down, and then, of course, there's the aerofoil at the back to keep the rear wheels down. That is the American idea of a sports racing car, but, of course, if you pushed it outside of the door here onto the public highway, you'd collect enough summonses to keep the courts busy for weeks, because it doesn't have things like side lamps and headlamps and tail lamps and indicators and all the other things that the law requires. And it is a pretty heavy investment, and that's one of the things which has led to this development now, which is going to be big in the United States, Formula A for 5-litre production car engines, but single-seaters. Now, you can buy one of these for £4,500 or plus engine, giving about 450 to 500 horsepower, about £6,000. But it does have the advantage that a young driver who's not yet in Grand Prix class can learn to handle real power and he's got a relatively reliable engine which will do about 2,500 miles of racing before a complete overhaul, which is more than you'll get from a Formula 1 or Formula 2 engine. Now we come to something really exciting, the first view of the McLaren single-seater Formula 1 Grand Prix car for 1969. And this is our first sight of a Grand Prix car which is designed for four-wheel drive. It won't have it at the beginning of the season, but it will have eventually. And that's one of the reasons why the petrol tanks are moved out here into the sponsons between the wheels to make room for the four-wheel drive shafts and the planetary drive gear inside. As usual, of course, the Formula 1 engine is hung out on the back from this rear bulkhead, and so is the rear suspension. Well, obviously, Bruce McLaren can't do all the design work while he's travelling around the world by air to the motor races on a timetable with changes of time and temperature that would leave most people prostrate without having to do the motor racing as well. So the McLaren organisation, there are two designers, Gordon Coppock and Joe Marquardt. Sometimes they work together on the same car, sometimes they split up the work and work independently. And here's Joe Marquardt to talk about the Formula 1 car. Now here you've got a sketch of, is this the Formula 1 car as it's going to appear?
That's what we reckon it will look like, yeah.
So it's not only going to be streamlined in between the wheels, but it's going to have a streamlined nose too?
Yes, we might have some ideas on there as well, yes.
Is it going to be something quite different from anything we've seen in the last few years?
Oh, it will look different, yes, but I'm sure some other people will come up with these sort of things as well to accommodate the fuel.
Now, a great deal of the drag on the present kind of single-seater is from the tyres and not from the body at all, isn't it?
Yes, that's correct.
How much are you going to cut down the drag by this fairing round the wheels?
Oh, we reckon we cut it down by about 50%.
The total drag? Or the wheel drag?
The wheel drag.
The wheel drag. And that's how
we get more drag from the body because the body is wider. So we will lose part of it, but we get also something back. We hope to get more back than we lose.
Are you going to gain any advantage in weight distribution from putting the streamlining on?
Yes, you will see when you put the fuel bags out there, you can go a bit back or forward with your fuel to get what you want as far as weight distribution is concerned.
Will you change the weight distribution much when you go to four-wheel drive?
You will do, because you want to make the front tyres do as much work as possible.
Will you be able to bring the tyre sizes down from these ridiculous wide tyres?
Yes, this is one of the ideas for four-wheel drive, to get a means of putting the power what the engines produce onto the road and try not only to make the rear wheels doing all the work, but try to get something from the front wheels as well.
You've worked for a number of racing car constructors now. What's the special feature of McLarens? Why are they successful? What makes them different from other racing cars?
I think we find the people who do these cars, they're very good craftsmen. They are really highly specialized people and they do a very good job. And I think that's one of the most important things. On top of all this, we try to finish the races, so if the cars are good enough. You can't win a race if you don't finish the race, so that must be one of the main things we have got. And you have to be there in time as well.
And this is a very exciting new car, but generally speaking, McLarens have not been wildly different or wildly way out in design. So why do they win?
We will find Bruce has a tendency to make the sensible thing.
He's very conservative, really, isn't he?
Partly he is, yes. But then he pays out, doesn't he?
Motor racing is a precision business and mistakes cost drivers lives, so Bruce keeps a close watch on what goes on in the machine shop. It's not just making the cars, you then have to go on modifying them, building new and improved parts into them right through the season to keep the cars winning. In export sales earnings, race winnings and support from sponsors, this little factory just off the end of the London airport runways probably earns as many dollars per man as any in the country, and a great deal more than most. Yet they have their problems too. On engines for the Can-Am and Formula A cars, they have to pay import duty of around £350 per engine. They get it back when the complete car is exported, but it means thousands of pounds of capital tied up earning no money, a heavy drain for a small company. And if they should simply start up an engine to test the car before delivering it to an export buyer, then they'd risk losing the import duty. That's the kind of straitjacket that we clamp on our top dollar earners.
Derek.
You have to be flexible in this business. There's Bruce checking over the construction of an aerofoil. That was one of the ideas that came in last season. This season we're going to see more streamlining, we're going to see four-wheel drive. The keynote is flexibility, and every one of the 35 men in this team pulls his weight.
Give Don a call if you get stuck with anything.
Phil Kerr, you're joint managing director of McLaren Racing. How long have you known Bruce?
I've known Bruce now for about 17 years.
That made you how old when you first knew him?
Well, Bruce was 14 and I was 17 when we first met.
If you had to describe him to somebody who doesn't know him, what would you say?
If I had to describe Bruce, I'd say first of all that the main characteristic that you're aware of is his cheerfulness, and secondly his tremendous enthusiasm for any project in which he becomes involved.
He just treats you well and respects your opinion. Doesn't try and tell you what to do all the time. He's willing to let you use a bit of initiative and only just guides you if you go a bit wrong. He allows you to be a person and work as a person, as an individual.
I find him a man that I can talk to. I can reason with him about my job. And I think he takes an interest in all of us.
Do you think him being a New Zealander makes any difference?
None whatsoever.
He spends a lot more time on the shop floor than a lot of bosses would. Does this upset people?
No, it doesn't. No. He can show most people to do most things. We'll always improve on his work, naturally, as skilled workers, but he can show anybody how to do anything.
Bruce, you're competing on the world's motor racing circuits and beating people who've got far, far more money to spend than you have. What's the secret of success?
It's very difficult to say, Gordon, the absolute one thing that is the secret, because I don't think there is any one thing, but certainly experience is tremendously important in motor racing, and to build up a motor racing team with experienced people takes a long time. Now, you can put any number of engineers together very quickly, but they're still not going to come out with a race-winning automobile. They'll come out with a good car, but they may come out with it too late, or it may be unreliable, it may be undeveloped. To put together a group of people that can produce a racing car that's going to be ready on time and will work is the initial secret.
Would you be very much better if you had 4 or 5 times as much money to spend?
No, we'd probably get in a terrible mess, I imagine. Each year it gets a little harder to keep everything as neatly and as nicely controlled as we did in previous years, because there's just that much more administration, there is that much more to go wrong. It takes us more and more time to plan ahead, and it means more disruption. If I come into the workshop and want to change things suddenly, or want to get a particular job done in a hurry, there is more complaints, there are more moans, there's more chaos caused. We often see the big companies. In fact, when I was racing for, say, one of the big companies like Ford, they would take a long time to get things done because it had to go down through the channels. I could occasionally offer to do little engineering jobs in our place, because I could come back and say, hey, start on this tomorrow morning and let's get it done. But as we get bigger ourselves, I find this facility disappearing.
Are you going to put a limit on the size then?
I think we ought to. As far as the size of the racing team goes, definitely. You can get too big as a racing team, and you could get involved and hidebound like a bigger organization would become. You've got to be able to move quickly. If somebody comes out with something better, or a better racing car, or a better idea, you'd better come out with it next week if you're going to be competitive. So you've got to be able to move quickly.
You've been eulogized in press articles for your dedicated professional approach. You're getting these results with only 35 people working here. What sort of approach do you demand from them?
Well, I think we've been very fortunate. We have a group of people at the moment, led by probably 4 or 5 people who, while I tend to say, let's get it done, and I tend to rush things, they will follow up and do it well as getting it done. And I would say that the quality that we've ended up with, the fact that we've actually got it done, is, I would like to take responsibility for, but the quality hasn't quite been mine. I think we've been fortunate in having a few people who like doing the job very well, in the machining areas, the sheet metal areas, the fabrication areas. In each case, we've got someone who's very careful and who cares about what he's doing. Now, this has obviously got to be carried over into the maintenance of the cars and so on. The actual care with which pieces are put together is very important on a racing car. Something done incorrectly or done badly, something assembled in a hurry, perhaps not crack-checked or not assembled absolutely perfect, can be very dangerous.
You talked as though you were driving them on to do things which their caution held them back, but you've got the reputation yourself of being one of the most cautious racing car constructors, unwilling to go ahead with anything that isn't very well proved.
Well, we're not innovators at the moment, but we haven't dared innovate largely because we've had to be there and we've had to finish with our racing cars in order to get the job done. Although we have broken out in quite a few new areas with this car, for instance, the Can-Am car. But no, where I'm cautious is purely as a result of driving the cars. I have to sit in them all day long and I don't want things falling off. So consequently in the drawing office I say, well, yeah, maybe it could be a bit thinner, but and maybe it will be a little bit lighter, but let's just leave it thick. So yes, yeah, I'm responsible for that. I'll take that that criticism, but while I'm driving the cars, they'll be that way. They'll probably lighten up a bit when I stop driving.
Amanda, come on, darling.
Amanda is the 3-year-old daughter of Bruce and his New Zealand wife, Pat, and they live in an attractive house near Walton-on-Thames. Bruce and Pat McLaren are a popular couple in the motor racing world and have had their fair share of failures and successes.
Oh, no.
The successes are demonstrated in the trophies which are displayed in his home and which range from the vast cup which he got when he won the Argentinian Grand Prix for Coopers in 1960 to the highly prized Ferodo Trophy, which he was given in 1968 for his services to motorsport. As the most recent and probably the most important trophy, it has pride of place on the top of the cabinet. Like most racing drivers, Bruce McLaren enjoys outdoor sports. He's a keen cricketing enthusiast and water skis if he gets the chance. He limps as the result of a childhood accident. Unlike many successful men, however, he doesn't indulge himself in luxury. His house is simple and tasteful, and it is to his home and his family that he turns for relaxation.
Comfy day. As usual.
In the months you are away from home, what do you miss most?
I would say just one, pure relaxation, and two, the little girl.
Does she come with you ever?
No, I might be old-fashioned, but I don't really like the idea of children around racetracks. In fact, I think I'm probably old-fashioned enough to figure that, in general, women in motor racing don't mix. Not actually at the track during the day, although Patty copes with the timekeeping and this sort of thing, and she's very efficient at it, does the lap scoring and so on. But she knows me well enough to stay out of my hair if I've got some kind of a technical problem or any sort of drama going on. I'm pretty unapproachable if I'm busy.
What for you are the best bits and the worst bits of being a racing driver's wife?
I think the best bits are travelling, which I adore, and meeting lots of people, seeing new places, which I love also. The opportunity to go to places which I wouldn't have otherwise. Obviously, the worst bits are the fact that I don't see as much of Bruce as I would like to, and certainly not with Amanda, because excuse me, when he's not racing, he's at the factory from early morning till late at night. But then you can't have it always, you know. You have to take the good with the bad.
Do you think that your family suffers as a result of the demands that motor racing makes?
No, not really. Fortunately, I don't. Amanda accepts it very well that we're both away, and Bruce is away even more than I am, and I don't think it has hurt her in the slightest at the moment. I hope it never does. And as for us, I'm sure that we're probably happier seeing each other when we do than if we were living out of each other's pockets as normal people perhaps do.
How far do you allow yourself to be conscious of the risks that he's running when he's racing?
I don't really think about them. I'm not a nervous type, fortunately, and I don't really think about things that can happen. I mean, one always knows they can, and I don't think you completely dismiss them from your mind, but on the other hand, if you keep yourself busy, as I do, you have got time to think about them anyway, which I think is the best way.
What makes these risks worthwhile?
Well, it's difficult for me to say when I don't actually drive, but as a wife, I would assume just the thrill and enjoyment and great achievement out of doing something that you really think is worthwhile.
But can you sit and bite your nails through a race and then really feel that the achievement was worth it? Or don't you sometimes look at those trophies and think, gosh, you know, I'd rather not have had them?
I could think of other things I'd like instead of some of those trophies, because they're not particularly beautiful, but on the end they all mean great things. No, I don't sit and bite my nails. I'm either timing or lap scoring or something, and I don't sort of think of it that way.
Is motor racing the sort of thing that you're prepared to go on doing for life? Do you visualize it as a career in itself, or do you visualize yourself stopping and then doing something else?
I'll stop the moment that I'll stop actively racing, the moment that I feel that I can't go as fast as I should without kind of extending things too much.
What do you think is the greatest reward that your combined jobs can give you?
The most satisfying part of it is actually having a car or seeing a car finished and actually driving it and running it and racing it. That's the most satisfying part at the moment. I think that's the thing that plus beating people that you race against. Those are the two satisfying things. I think that's the thing that drives all the people that we're involved with in the company.
Do you see the World Championship as a great sort of pinnacle?
Not the World Championship in itself, but what it represents and the fact that you've done better than anyone else, yes.